Right now on KGW, the latest on a trio of local wildfires, including one just outside of Salem that started after a crash took out power lines. Then, the new AI tech is helping PGE predict wildfire danger.
Where would that fire go, and is that going to impact any of our power lines?
How it's helping forecasters prevent disasters from catching spark. Plus, Portland could be at risk of losing millions in federal grants if they don't get rid of their DEI policies under the Trump administration's new executive orders. And later, the latest on the search for more than 170 people still missing after devastating Texas floods. Your news at noon starts right now. New at noon, Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley just announced that he will seek re-election to a fourth term in 2026. Merkley, a Democrat first elected to the Senate in 2008, says he wants to continue focusing on issues like voting rights, climate policy, housing, and health care. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm China Green. Merkley, an East Portland resident, has been contemplating his future for months now and actually extended his time to decide beyond a self-imposed deadline of June 30th. So Merkley said in the end that he and his wife came to the conclusion that he should continue for one primary reason, quote, the desire to help counterbalance President Donald Trump and his influence on all branches of government. He made the announcement on social media.
So today, I'm announcing I am running for re-election to continue the fight for Oregonians in these dark and dangerous times.
So Merkley is currently the top Democrat on the Senate Budget Committee. He says he plans to campaign on protecting social programs and limiting the influence of big money in politics. We are keeping an eye on several wildfires across the region this afternoon. The Marion County Sheriff's Office continues to monitor the Turner Fire, which burned well into the night. And just into the newsroom, all level 3 go now evacuations have been downgraded to level 2 be set warnings. That fire sparked just before 2 yesterday afternoon after a car crashed into a power pole. It burned around 30 acres and destroyed 2 buildings, but no homes. While conditions have improved, neighbors are keeping a close eye on the fire.
I mean, it's kind of scary, but just because I got 3 boys, and the one is just a newborn.
Across the Columbia River, the Skamania County Sheriff's Office is mopping up a fire near Dog Mountain. It burned south of the Dog Mountain trailhead and shut down one lane of State Route 14 last night. No one was evacuated there. And in southern Oregon, the elk fire in Klamath County has grown to about 2,000 acres. The Oregon State Fire Marshal says the fire is threatening homes in Lake Klamath County. It's still 0% contained. Meantime, local power companies have to make sure that their equipment doesn't spark a fire. And with that in mind, Portland General Electric is using new tools like artificial intelligence to stay ahead of the threat. Our Chris McGinnis has more.
PGE maintains more than 30,000 miles of power lines. Now, as conditions grow riskier, the utility is deploying real-time weather monitoring and launching its first ever AI fire modeling platform to help forecast when and where power shutoffs might be needed.
When wildfire risk rises, timing matters.
So we've invested in a lot of tools here at PGE to really help get that big picture of how weather will impact our assets.
Portland General Electric has a new AI model to help their meteorologists stay one step ahead.
How new?
This year.
This new AI fire modeling platform uses satellite data to find hotspots, terrain and fuel moisture data to track how combustible the surrounding landscape is, coupled with weather forecasts to simulate if a fire were to ignite, where might it spread, up to 12 hours in advance.
If that is all conducive and if a fire started, where would that fire go? And is that going to impact any of our power lines? Do we need to potentially shut that one off?
Forecasters can customize this new AI model for hotter temperatures, drier fuels, or stronger wind, and then recalculate the spread potential.
And with this, we could overlay our power lines and see if anything is in the way, basically, of this potential fire spread. So we would know that we may need to proactively de-energize a line for safety.
The modeling is powered in part by data from 92 weather stations across the region, tracking temperature, wind, humidity, and fuel conditions. PGE is constantly adding to those.
and that is to monitor these conditions and then look at the outages that may have occurred.
Historically, given similar weather conditions,
And then we can, really give like an outage forecast based on that.
PGE's in-house meteorologists use the AI tool alongside daily coordination with the National Weather Service and fire agencies.
We will talk pretty much every day, especially in the middle of fire season. We are on coordination calls with them. We are a public safety partner of theirs, and we are always have an open line of communications.
And while red flag warnings still guide major decisions, this platform gives PGE added flexibility when they see localized threats to their power lines.
It's just really getting the subject matter expertise to line up with, the company's knowledge of where their risk is and what they need to be aware of.
The new modeling system is just one of several tools added to PGE's wildfire strategy this year. Combined with field sensors and a growing weather data network, PGE says it's aiming to make faster, more informed decisions when conditions turn dangerous. Chris McGinnis, KGW News.
It is time for weather with Rod Hill. What a beautiful scene behind you.
Yeah, isn't this nice? By the way, a quick comment. Great work by Chris McGinnis, as always. It does bear watching. We love to throw out AI, and I think there may be a conception that, boy, this is just smart and great and solving problems out of the gate. But not necessarily. I will tell you there are other weather models now that are AI introduced that I've been looking at. And sometimes they're better than the models we've looked at for the last handful of years, and sometimes they're not. So that, too, is a learning curve for the future. And I think a lot of people are very hopeful it will turn out to be, eventually anyway, a giant step forward in forecast and meteorology accuracy. We'll see. All right, here's Snook Winds Casino Resort in Lincoln City. The dense fog advisory from this morning is gone. The visibility has improved, and the skies are starting to thin out a little bit. Here's a look at that visible satellite picture at noon. Still a lot of clouds, but they are, in most areas, showing signs of starting to thin out. A lot of us are starting to see some breaks in the cloud cover, including Salem. Good afternoon to you. There's a live look at our capital, 73. Really delightful noon hour we have going on. Clouds, but some breaks over the city as well. You don't see them that much in this particular view, 71. And I still have us about 79, maybe 80 this afternoon. Generally speaking, the forecast for the remainder of your day calls for increasing sunshine and comfortable temperatures. 7-day, we're tracking heat next week, if you haven't heard. Hottest of the year so far. That's coming up.
Thank you, Rod. All right, here's a look at some of national headlines this afternoon. President Trump's order restricting birthright citizenship is on hold again. A lawsuit seeking to protect babies who would be denied birthright citizenship was granted class action status Thursday. The suit was brought on behalf of a pregnant immigrant parents and their infants. And the federal judge is now in New Hampshire who made that ruling. Also granted a temporary block of the president's order. The government can appeal. And check out this crazy video out of New York that shows a man grabbing a 6-year-old boy off a public sidewalk. You can see it right there. He then allegedly walked off with the boy before doing this. Just threw him to the ground. The suspect, 36-year-old Jonathan Robolino, right there, was taken into custody and faces charges including assault and attempted kidnapping. The kid was taken to the hospital for a head injury, is expected to recover. Panera Bread has settled 3 remaining lawsuits tied to its highly caffeinated charged lemonade, which has been blamed for 2 deaths. The beverage first made headlines in 2023 after a 21-year-old with a heart condition suffered a fatal cardiac arrest after consuming the drink. The remaining lawsuits were dismissed. And those are a look at your national headlines. Here back at home, Portland leaders have a decision to make after the Trump administration that told cities across the country that they have to either get rid of their diversity, equity, and inclusion policies or run the risk of losing federal grant money. The city has to affirm that it will follow all terms and conditions tied to the federal funding grants, which make up a portion of the city's budget. Alma McCarty explains.
We get a lot of federal grants, about $100 $100-ish million a year on the whole. They're primarily in housing, transportation. There's a lot in the public safety sphere as well.
And a new fiscal year paired with a new administration, presenting new challenges to the city of Portland.
We found out just in the last week that we now have the first grants coming forward where we need to make some decisions about how we work with the federal administration.
On Wednesday, City Administrator Michael Jordan released a statement alluding to these decisions and how to respond, writing, in part, executive orders signed by President Donald J. Trump have reshaped the legal landscape for cities that operate programs focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. In particular, the federal government could withhold grants from cities whose DEI initiatives are out of compliance with the executive orders. He says the city currently manages 126 active federal grants totaling $387 million. And last year alone, Portland was awarded $98 million in federal grants.
We now need to look at the really important programs that those grants fund, and also the really important programs that the federal government isn't happy with, and figure out how we do our best to serve Portlanders.
Exactly how the city will respond remains to be seen. We spoke with Council President Ilana Pertolgini and Councilor Samir Kanal.
Sometimes that's called DEI, sometimes it's called inclusion, sometimes it's called making sure we're bringing everybody up as we do the work. That's what we need to be doing moving forward. That's part of Portland's values and Council's values. And if the Trump administration disagrees with that, I don't know what to tell them.
And we know what our values are and what our community's values are. And we care about making sure that we are not backsliding on equity and not making sure that we're not going to sell out any of our communities.
Alma McCarty, KGW News.
Oregon schools could lose more than $73 million after the U.S. Department of Education cut several grants. The local cuts are part of the nearly $7 billion that the Trump administration is withholding nationwide. Over $20 million funds immigrant education in Oregon, with another $20 million targeting student achievement. In a statement, the Oregon Education Department says cutting these programs would undermine efforts to close opportunity gaps and support vulnerable students. And we are also keeping an eye on upcoming cuts to Medicaid as part of the president's big, beautiful bill and what it could mean for Oregonians. More than 1 million people in Oregon rely on Medicaid for health coverage. That includes 70% of children in rural areas. On the 4th of July, President Trump signed the bill into law, which includes about $1 trillion in cuts to Medicaid. Last night on The Story, we heard from the CEO of Care Oregon, a nonprofit that provides health insurance services. He spoke to our Blair Best about what people should do before the cuts happen.
The first thing is to try to make sure they don't lose coverage, right? Because a lot of the hassles will be administrative, that we have to make sure that people keep their addresses up to date with the Oregon Health Authority and with the state, that they pay attention and work with community partners and companies like Care Oregon and other coordinated care organizations to make sure that they're paying attention to the timing of these things. So if there are work requirements, if there are eligibility renewals they need to do, they're taking care of that in advance.
These cuts are happening right away. The New York Times created a timeline that indicates Medicaid and SNAP work requirements would begin in 2026, while additional funding changes would be delayed until 2028.